Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll try to make this as quick as possible. I'm John Morrow. I'm the agricultural manager here at AgriSearch. For those that don't know, AgriSearch is a farmer-funded levy organization, and GrassCheck is a joint venture between ourselves, AFBI, and CAFRE. Dara fund the plots that are both in Hillsborough and Greenmount, and AgriSearch funds the farmer facing element, which is our farms who collect our data on a weekly basis. And AgriSearch also funds the growth predictions weekly that AFB provide. So, what is GrassCheck? GrassCheck essentially is a data collection, demonstration, and knowledge exchange service that basically aims to provide farmers with knowledge on how to grow and utilize more grass. So the farmers essentially demonstrate good grassland management on their own farms. They record the data weekly, both measuring the quantity of grass grown weekly and also sending off samples to AFB to measure the quality of the grass. Through doing this, they, I suppose, develop their own grassland management skills, and therefore they are able to exchange this information with other farmers. And we'll chat about that a bit later on, but that's basically come in the format previously through farm walks and other events, podcasts, and different things. So by growing and utilizing more grass, we hope to improve the business sustainability of farms in Northern Ireland, both financially, environmentally, and socially. And we'll chat a bit about how we do that later on. So the current project, GrassCheck Farmer Element, has been going for about 8 or 9 years, and GrassCheck itself in the plots has been going much longer. So as I said, the farmers record grass weekly. Go out and measure grass weekly, input that information into their AgriNet account, and then that's passed on to ourselves. They also send weekly grass samples or bi-weekly grass samples to ourselves, which we pass on to AFB, get the samples analyzed, and then send that information back to the farmers themselves to give them an idea of the quality of grass they're grazing. That information then is also supplied to the wider farming community through a weekly bulletin and a GrassCheck newsletter that we disseminate across our social media and through email bulletin. We have, I suppose, in the last year, we've been pushing GrassCheck quite heavily. It's our major project. We've had 7 farm walks right across Northern Ireland, with 2 internal farm walks with our own network of farmers, trying to get a bit of feedback on the current project, our strengths, our weaknesses. And I think one thing that was highlighted by the farmers that are currently in the project, that I suppose we haven't provided them with a huge amount of support. We handed over a plate meter. We explained how to input the data in AgriNet and let them learn as they went along. There is plans in the future to have much closer support, both in terms of getting up to speed of how to measure grass, how to input this data, but also how to improve your grassland management, how to make most of this information you collect on a weekly basis. As I say, CAFRE then take the data that is recorded both in the plots and on farm, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it in the paper. They have a section where they provide advisory notes on the current situation on farms and both in plots in terms of what to do, best practice, that type of thing. So the future of the project. So we are recruiting new farmers. We're hoping to recruit farmers with excellent grassland knowledge, and are currently doing reasonable grassland management. We by no means expect everyone to be perfect. Hopefully, we'll improve throughout the project. And we essentially want them to measure grass weekly, report it back to us, and sample grass bi-weekly or monthly, depending if you're a dairy or beef and sheep farmer. So, as I said previously, we haven't provided a huge amount of training and farmer support. That's just probably because we had limited resources at AgriSearch. We're currently going through a transition of growth, and we hope to be able to provide farmers with more personal support throughout the project, both to, I suppose, to work with them closely to achieve their own targets on farm by increasing the grass grown on farm, increasing the grass utilized on farm, and ensuring that it's constantly quality grass going into your stock, not just it's a competition of who can grow the most, but also ensuring that it's constantly high quality going grass by going into those covers at the right height. So to get as much out of this project as possible, it is a data recording project. So we do measure a lot of things. We hope to measure grass growth. We hope to measure fertilizer inputs, stocking rates to get demand on farm. But we're very conscious that we could show to the wider agricultural industry through benchmarking the benefits of utilizing and growing lots of grass. So we can hopefully benchmark these farms that participate, and I'll chat a bit about that later on. It won't be a completely in-depth benchmark, but it will just be the basis to really highlight the benefits of good grassland management. So we're conscious that the current project, we have a few areas that we're lacking in farmers, and a part of the re-recruitment of farmers is to ensure a better geographical spread. And this is for data recording in terms of measuring, getting a true accurate reflection of county by county. So ensuring we have enough farmers in those two counties, particularly dairy farmers in those counties to I suppose demonstrate the true growth on farms in that area so other farmers in that area can relate to them. And a better balance of enterprises. So we've lost a few dairy farmers along the way, one thing or another, and we've increased a few beef and sheep farmers. We're hoping to get the balance back to 50-50. Uh, and I suppose we have these farmers that have great grassland management skills and have learned a lot through the project. And we really hope that they are willing to participate in future knowledge exchange events, whether they be farm walks or speaking on a podcast or even just a weekly farmer profile in a social media or on a newspaper. So what are we exactly looking for? We're looking up to 50 farmers, as I said, half dairy, half beef and sheep, geographically spread right across the counties, and especially more east and more westerly because we're very easterly based at the minute. We want to get the geographical spread right across Northern Ireland to I suppose show reflection of the growth situation and how much grass is grown in each of those areas uh, each year. We're looking farmers that have majority of grasses and or grass clover, so preferably not multi-species or I suppose cereals or any other forage crops. I it's just because when we're modeling the grass to predict grass growth and also in terms of what grass grown, we need it to be mainly grass in order to get a true accurate reflection on grass growth but also grass prediction for the following week or by week. So appropriate and relatable average farm cover. So what we're essentially looking at that is grass grows at different rates. So grass starts off growing slowly after it's grazed, and as it gets longer, it gets faster and faster growing. But we also want to ensure that the animals are grazing high quality grass. So what we're essentially saying is we want an appropriate farm cover for that time of year. So we want farmers to manage their farm cover to make sure that they haven't got so much grass that it's not as good a quality going into the animals, but also it's probably showing a higher an inflated level of growth in that on that farm because the grass is much longer in that farm. So we want farmers managing the grass correctly and I suppose keeping a consistent level of grass across their farm, an appropriate level. So we're looking for a minimum size of farm, a minimum size of number of paddocks, preferably more the better. Uh, and that's just for both the larger the farm, the larger the paddocks, the more accurate reflection we get of that area's growth. We haven't decided on a minimum size of paddocks or grazing block. We're just going to wait and see on applications and then go from there. Though, as I previously said, we want you to already be a proficient grassland manager. You don't by no means want to be excellent, but we really want you getting the basics right. So we want people going in at the appropriate height grazing and coming out at the appropriate height of residue. We also want farmers either block grazing or 12 hours, 48 hours moves, no longer between 12 and 48-hour moves. So you want them going in and coming out at the right height, but also not spending too much time in the paddocks. And that's mainly just to get an accurate level of growth on the farm. It's very challenging for any of these softwares to accurately, uh, I suppose, tell the true growth of grass on the farm over a week if animals are set stock. So they very much have to be rotationally grazing. So yeah, as I say, we plan to work with the farmers selected more closely to really drive performance on their farms. So we're hoping the farmers themselves will be receptive to feedback, both positive and negative, and open to learning. All farmers, so any of the current 50 farmers, will have to reapply, and that's just to make it a fair playing field right across, and also to give new farmers an opportunity to apply. So, how are we going to select farmers? We're going to do a quick questionnaire. So, I'll explain a bit about that at the end. But essentially, there's currently a farmer pack on the AgriSearch website. It's also been shared in our social media accounts. And if you click into that, there's a link for the to complete a questionnaire, which is basically your application form. There will also be a farm visit to go along this application to get a sense of the place and a sense of the person. Uh, Selection will be carried out over January, and we should have a decision by the end of January on whether you have been selected or not. So, what do we expect from the farmers? So, the farmers currently will continue to measure grass weekly on a plate meter. Uh, this is currently generally done over the weekend or on a Monday, and there's a deadline for to have your information onto AgriNet. Then the farmers also currently send fresh grass samples away to ourselves and for AFB to analyze in terms of quality. Currently, that's done bi-weekly on both beef and sheep farms and dairy, but we're going to move to bi-weekly for dairy farmers, so they'll be sending a sample every other week, and beef and sheep farmers will be only sending in a sample monthly. So we're looking to improve the current process there. We've had a few problems, as some of you will be aware, with just logistics in terms of that. But hopefully, over the winter and the spring, we'll get that smoothed out. One thing we're hoping to improve within the project, some of farmers are excellent, but we're going to basically demand that farmers measure what's left in the field after the animals graze and what's in the field before the animals graze. And I'll show you how we go about that in the next slide. The farmers basically put all their information into a software called AgriNet. They do this weekly. So after they go out and measure their grass, they come back and they can either type it into their phone using an app, or they can go on to the online desktop version and input their data. And I'll show you what each one of them looks like. Each input section looks like that in AgriNet shortly. But essentially what we're looking at is weekly stock numbers, so the amount of animals on the farm. If they want to be split up into different mobs, that can be done. We also want accurate weights. The weights and stock numbers are really, really important so we can get a true reflection of the stock and weight in the farm for future modeling and data recording purposes. It's also really important for the farmers to input their grass demand, so they get this by the weight of the animal, and then it's just a multiplication by the dry matter intake. And this will all be explained to any farmers that uh, get accepted. But it's also really user-friendly, AgriNet. If you hover over a lot of the empty boxes, it will tell you a suggestion of how to go about different things. So they enter their grass and their silage and their meal the animals are eating a day, and then that will tell us a demand for the animals. And I'll chat a bit about that in a minute. So we're also really hoping farmers will input their fertilizer and slurry inputs onto the grazing block into AgriNet. This will just allow us to get an end response on farms to see how much nitrogen is growing, how much grass. This will be fantastic in terms of research, but also for the own farmers to get an appreciation of which paddocks are performing best, which to the amount of fertilizer they get to get an efficiency rate. We're also looking milk in terms of their weekly or bi-weekly text to input the amount of liters and the quality of the milk they're producing on that from that grazing block. One thing I suppose, and we'll chat a bit about this later, and it might make a bit more sense later. We really want farmers to let us know when they've taken out certain paddocks for reseeding or silage, and not just to stop measuring them. So we want to know what's happening to those paddocks. and to sort of get an accurate amount of grass grown. So we really need to include the silage taken off those paddocks and not just the grass grown in those paddocks. So we also require our farmers to take a part in knowledge exchange events. These come in many forms. They've been mainly farm walks this year. Previously, we've had podcasts on farmer weekly profiles, and it's really just to showcase good grassland management and really educate the wider industry of what farmers should be doing at that certain time. So they're very timely. It could be a stage, maybe we're in drought and how the farmer's adapting to drought conditions, or maybe really wet conditions, how they're managing conditions in the wet grazing, hints and tips for other farmers to take on board. Uh, we have a expanded training program coming along. We haven't provided a huge amount of training for the farmers who've currently involved, but we do plan to uh, hold certain training events. We plan to get some consultants in, and I suppose harder to reach people, maybe even from the UK and stuff, and from down south, just to expand the knowledge of the farmers in the event. But I think it's really important that farmers take part in these training events. It takes a lot of effort to organize these people to come along to these events, and we're very conscious that we need as many farmers attending these as possible. There will be a requirement to do an annual farm benchmarking. I'll explain a bit more about that later. It won't be a fully in-depth benchmark. It won't include any fixed cost or anything like that. So what do farmers do each week? So they go out with their plate meter and they measure the grass in each paddock. And then if you look on this little slide, you'll see here the input, the uh, cover in each paddock weekly. They'll put the date they grazed it or they cut it, if they did, down in this column. And then they'll put, if they did graze it or cut it, they'll put in the cover before they grazed or cut it, and then they'll put in the cover of whatever grass is left after they grazed and put it. And that's really important that farmers do that. We had a farm walk this year, and it was put to us by one farmer that she was in fact putting it to the nearest unit. She wasn't rounding it to the closest 50, but she quite rightly put out if I was 100 kilograms out and I do 10 grazings a year, that's a ton of grass I'm out. It's a considerable amount of grass. It could be 10, 15, 5% out in a year. So it's really important we get that level of data coming along. So this for the dairy farmers is where we input our milk data. So we would put in, so you can actually get this linked to your dairy co-op. So this farmer is with Lakeland Dairies. This is the data was collected. He can put in the amount of milk supplied and then how many days that milk supply was from. So was it from 2 days or 1 days? And then you just put in the number of cows that produce that milk, and that gives us amount of milk produced from that herd. And then I suppose if they're feeding milk to their calves, we can substitute that off and include that so we're not missing any milk lost to calves. And then also the text we get from our supplier, we can include the fat and protein there. So we also mentioned fertilizer. So this is an example of slurry actually, in fact. So we hope farmers include their weekly fertilizer slurry. And it's really simple. So I've done this back to front, but if you look on the right, you select the date you went out with the fertilizer slurry, you select the slurry. So I've selected cattle slurry there that went out in the springtime. I put them out per acre. So I went out with 2,000 gallons per acre and it was for grazing. And then I just ticked the paddocks. I did that, did the I put the slurry on, excuse me. So I just take these two paddocks and that's it, save. So it really does take very little time. And it'd be great to get this weekly. And if not, write it down on a piece of paper and then input it. Sorry, it'd be great to get this as soon as you do it, but if not, weekly, and just write it down on a piece of paper. And then when you come into put it into your AgriNet account, like with your grass measurements, you'd also do your fertilizer and slurry recommendations. So this is what farmers get out. So we go out and we measure our grass and we input it into that sheet. And then we also have to input the demand. And I was preven in saying when we complete our diet, it's really important we know the number of animals. So this is for a dairy example. Now there's no weights of animals in this one, but you can see here we have the number of dairy cows currently being milked on the platform. We have an estimation of how much grass is going on that, and that is worked back from I suppose, total demand minus meal and silage. So this farmer at this time of year, this was in the middle of July, he was only feeding 4 kilograms of meal and he was feeding 16 kilograms of grass. So this created a demand line, which is our blue bar here, and this told how much grass he was. Uh, this basically told demand. So anything above the blue line was surplus. So you can see here there he had a significant surplus in some of these paddocks. And then over here, this was telling his figures. So over the last week, he had grown nearly 80 kilograms of grass per hectare. So hence why he probably had a surplus. His demand per hectare was only 53. So he had a surplus of 25 kilograms. And this is his demand. So some of our farmers use different figures here to base. Some use the wedge alone. Some of our farmers use demand per hectare, or sorry, uh, livestock per hectare, and then farm cover to divide the two. So they use that to manage the demand, and some of our farmers even use the cover per livestock unit rather than just an average farm cover. So they have a target where they want to be at a certain time of year, and they decide whether they need to take out some silage to reduce the amount of grass on farm, to ensure the quality of the grass is constantly going in. Because if you look on our little bar graph over here, we want our cows going into something between 2,800 and 3,000. So you can see he's just starting to slip above this. And if he didn't take it out any grass, maybe next week we could see this average farm cover increase. And therefore, the next paddock he was going to go into was too strong. So that's a little about that. But as I said, you don't have to be an expert in any of this. This will all be explained to you throughout the process, and it'll be just a constant learning process of how to manage and measure grass. So it's not just ourselves gets data out of the program. Our farmers also get program data out. So you can see it's been an outstanding year. So this is one of our farmers that grew an awful lot of grass. You can see here the average amount of grass he grew was 13.7 hectares per tons per hectare. Sorry. So you can see here the each bar is a paddock on his farm, and you can see here the number of measurements was done on each paddock. So you can see all these 37 paddocks must have been measured every week. And then these ones with less must have been taken out for grazing or maybe taken out for silage at some stage. But what this farmer can do, for example, maybe this paddock here, it only grew 10.5 ton, which is excellent, but he had plenty of paddocks growing well above 14 tons. So maybe he'll base his decision on reseeding next year on based on this paddock grew the least. So he might identify this paddock is his worst performing paddock, and therefore he might receive that next year. So it's just an extra little bit of data to make more informed decisions, not just on a weekly basis from our wedge previously, but also on an annual basis from our best paddocks card, which is shown here. So the training and support will provide. I'm sure a lot of the farmers that will be selected will have already used AgriNet or already measured grass, so they'll not need as much support at the start. But those that maybe are new to measuring grass or new to AgriNet or new to recording information will need that little bit of support, and we'll be there to provide that support on a weekly basis, whether it's over the phone or in person. We also plan to hold 5 training events throughout the year. I suppose we usually have one event where we invite the farmers to an annual opening meeting to explain, so I suppose, what our plans are for the year. And then we have a closing meeting. Then we plan to have 2 on-farm training events and then 1 study tour. So this could be down south to a particular farmer, or maybe over to the UK to see a particular farmer, or several farms to see some excellent grassland management. So our farm benchmarking, sorry, this is really to provide data on the benefits of good grassland management. So you can see here, it is going to be very much gross margin. So we're going to require the output per hectare, so the milk and meat produced, and then we'll apply a cost, a profit from that, or an income from that, sorry, should I say. And then also inputs, so feed, purchase feed, and then forage inputs like fertilizer, sprays, reseeding, them sort of things. There'll be no fixed costs in this. There'll be no overheads. It will just be solely uh, income minus input costs per hectare. And then social. So we're conscious there that it's also really important. One of our farm walks, we highlighted the benefits of good grassland management, the fact there was less hours worked on the farm. They're able to have flexible working hours during the summer because the cows were out of grass and they didn't have to bed cubicles and make a ration up and things like that. So really trying to identify the hours farmers are working on farm and how that's socially impacting farmers across Northern Ireland. We can also link a lot of the data we collect to environmental based studies. So for example, we can do simple nutrient balances. So for the amount of food produced on farm, whether it be milk or meat, minus or sorry, the nutrients minus the output. So we can do simple things there, like the off-farm sales as such, and then also include the nutrient inputs in terms of fertilizer. And a lot of this can be worked back into working out a simple carbon calculation for that farm. So wider reach, we plan to have improved communications. We have part-time communications person now in AgriSearch, my colleague Jasmine Morton. She's done a lot on terms of a pushing us on social media. We've got a TikTok up promoting farm walking events, and it's been really good. We've got a lot more farmers to events by not just going through the traditional written press. Less and less people are reading newspapers. More and more people are scrolling through TikTok or Facebook or Instagram. So we've been very much very social media driven recently. But we also plan to expand in terms of webinars and improved weekly bulletin with more detail along with our colleagues at CAFRE. We've previously done podcasts in the past and weekly farmer profiles, and we plan to do them in the future. One thing we are very conscious of, we've been very working very closely with CAFRE and AFBI, and we very much plan to do that in the future. But we also have included wider industry at these events. So we've included seed companies and other companies that come and share their knowledge of what they're finding. So we had Germinal and Barenberg and different organizations out with us on farm, passing on their knowledge that they're learning weekly out on farm. Uh, and as I say, we plan to engage our findings of this project with the wider industry. So that could be getting BGGs in and discussing how our own farmers in the group um, got more from grass, or even a processor meetings or industry stakeholder meetings. So in terms of farmer payments, our farmers are currently paid £1,000 or up to £1,000, depending on their performance. So we a bit really basic payment structure here. If you record 80% of the grass measurements throughout the year and 80% of the samples and management data, you will receive £800. Uh, if you do 60% or above, you receive £600 and on so. There's also a payment of £200 for attending two or more in-person training events. So this is really to drive the amount of people going to these training events to ensure when we go and get people from further afield that there's enough farmers at those training events to make it worthwhile, those people coming from a distance. So those farmers that maybe don't already have a plate meter will be provided. If any repairs are needed throughout the year, we will repair or replace it temporarily until we get the plate meter repaired. A free AgriNet account will also be supplied. This is worth €170 currently. And also, you get bi-weekly samples back from AFBI and ourselves, or monthly if you're a beef and sheep farmer. And each sample is currently worth £36. So that's a significant, I suppose, value in that, in terms of it's probably something not farmers are doing because of the cost of it. So by doing it often enough, you're getting free data in terms of the quality of grass grown or quality of the grass grown on your farm. There's 22 weather stations across Northern Ireland. This is used to a lot for the modelling in terms of predicting the future growth in that area, along with the farmer data and the plot data. The farmer will also get access to their own weather station if they have a weather station placed on their farm or their nearest weather station. And this is just in terms of temperature, soil temperature, moisture, rainfall, things like that. So that's probably very valuable to farmers, and farmers love a bit of weather information. Uh, that's everything. I don't think I've missed anything, Jason, but hopefully you'll mention anything I've missed. The deadline is the 19th of December, so that's the Friday before Christmas. You can apply for the grass check through our website. So if you go onto our website, you'll see in publications, is it, Jason?
Yeah, you find it in the main story, but yes, you'll find it in
You'll
publications
find it on the main
miscellaneous.
page,
You will
but
find it in the main page,
yeah,
or also
you'll find it on the
publications
main page.
miscellaneous, but you will find it in the main page. Yeah, it's still on the main page.
So there's a farmer booklet there with all information that I've probably missed a few things, and that will cover everything. And if you have any questions, uh, don't be afraid to ask. Our contact details are in that farmer booklet if you want to ask any questions directly to myself or Jason. There is also a link to the application, which is just a simple questionnaire. It takes 5 minutes, honestly. It's mainly multi-choice with a few bit of text, but very little. You should fly through it, and we hope to get as many of you applying as possible. As I say, all applications are we welcome, and all levels of grassland management we welcome. Jason, have you got anything further?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Just there's a couple of questions here in
Oh,
the
I'll have
in the
to exit
box.
to.
So, the first one here is: Are sheep only farms being accepted, or will it be beef and sheep combinations only? So, John.
Yeah, so yeah, both are more than acceptable. So we can have sheep only. We have several sheep only farmers, and we have several beef only or dairy only farmers, or a combination of the two. So it's either or.
Okay, that's grand. And anyone else wants to put a question in, they just use the Q&A box. They're coming through now. A question here just on AgriNet. A farmer here says he's used it in the past. The major hurdle he found with it was in his grazing system, he divided up the field's electric fence into paddocks, but the paddocks weren't fixed and they changed about a bit. Sometimes it was four paddocks, sometimes it was two paddocks. Have you any comments on the ability of AgriNet to cope with that? And I'm not sure myself. Being a regular AgriNet user, that might still be a challenge. I don't know.
No, that is a challenge, Jason,
Yeah,
especially if it's for a beef and sheep system where they're spending longer than a day in those paddocks. So no, that is a challenge, and I don't think there's any really ways around that. It is
no.
sort of designed to have set areas in those paddocks. You
Uh,
could, I suppose, if you're taking more than 1 or 2 days, you would just take the last days as the whole graze out. You would probably measure the paddocks as a collective rather than an individual one, if that makes sense. So you wouldn't measure the temporary divide, you'd measure all. It does leave you in this strange area when you're sort of halfway through that area that you have a
that's
strange amount.
Yeah, that would be what we do to with some fields which are bigger than one grazing, one day's grazing, and you just measure that whole. Yes, while you're in that transition, it's a bit strange, but you're right. The rest is probably the easiest way to do it. Next question here, John, is the whole farm to be measured or just the grazing platform? It's really just the grazing platform, isn't it, John?
Yeah, it's just the grazing platform. If, for example, you only take one cut off a field and then you graze it for the rest of the year, we would very much suggest you graze it from that point onwards, or vice versa. If you graze a field up until a certain point and then it becomes silage, we would recommend you to measure that also. But if it's just silage 80, 70, 80% of the time, I wouldn't measure that at all. I don't know what you would do with the data you would get from that in terms of making informed decisions. So no, we wouldn't recommend to measure any silage ground.
I think the question I'm probably a repeat of the past. What do you do if you graze and electric fence paddock sizes change? I think yes, I would measure the bigger field. Yes, while you're grazing, halfway through grazing it, you're going to have a slightly in between reading, but I think that's probably the better option. The next question then is how long does the scheme and program run for? Well, I suppose the simple answer to that question is we've been running since the farm bit for the last 9 years now. This particular phase is for 3 years, so we'll be recruiting farmers on a 3-year contract for for this one. John, do you want to answer the next one? What size of farm will be considered too small?
I suppose we just don't know yet. We've had farms as low as sort of 10 to 15 hectares. I suppose that will just depend on the applications per region. Some farms maybe if there's huge demand in a county, maybe that the average size of that county minimum size will be higher than those others. And it's just a reflection of getting the best candidate per county, I suppose. And that just a larger farm generally gives us more data than it is, but it just doesn't come down to size. It will be very much based on the person, their grassland management, their how accurate they are recording data, etc. It won't just be a case of the largest farms win. So I definitely still just throw your name in, even if you think you're too small, and we can have that discussion.
Okay, next question here, John. Historically, my father manages the grass, but I want to get involved to learn and understand better. So would I be considered too much of a novice?
No, I think we're very much welcome to anybody that's willing to learn and receptive to feedback. We want you to have a pretty basic level of grassland management in terms of, trying to go in at a reasonable cover, but a lot of that can be taught very simply. Look, it's like anything, you'll only learn as you go on. So I think if you have a willingness to learn, you'll be more than capable in this project.
Okay, next question. Would you accept a farmer who is contract raising dairy heifers?
Yeah, they would probably end up going down on the beef and sheep system rather than a dairy, just because they're not producing milk. They probably would go down as beef, even though they're contract rearing, just the fact they're dry stock. We do call it beef and sheep, but technically, I suppose it's beef sheep slash dry stock would be fair, wouldn't it, Jason? It's probably
Yeah, I
not.
think so. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think we definitely, I think it's a genuine enterprise out there, and I think we'd be more than willing to look at that. The next one says you were looking for farmers in Armagh and Tyrone. Does this not include Armagh and Fermanagh? Does this not include Tyrone? I think just to
No.
clarify what John was saying there is he looking. We're looking for farmers for all six counties, but we have a particular shortage historically in Armagh and Fermanagh, which is why we're really kind of particularly looking for applicants there. But we welcome applicants from all six counties right across the
Yeah,
province.
it's more of a historic thing than going forward. We hope to have even numbers of farmers right across all six counties. It was just a case that previously we've always struggled to recruit farmers in Armagh and Fermanagh. So that was just why we mentioned that, and hence why we've decided to recruit new farmers to sort of get a better geographical spread than we currently have.
Yeah. Okay. Then the next question: if you graze horses rotationally, do you just pull those paddocks temporarily from AgriNet, pull those paddocks separate from AgriNet, or would that exclude you? So what way would that handle, John?
That is a good question.
That's what we hadn't thought about.
No, it's not one we've come across. A Yeah, it just depends on the scale. It's probably a handful of horses compared to the amount of cattle or sheep on the farm. So it might even be negligible. But if it was reasonable, I suppose it would be a case by case situation, Jason, and we would probably overcome that
Yeah,
over a discussion over the phone. It's very difficult to get an understanding of the situation in something like this. But I don't honestly know the answer to that. You'd probably just include that demand in terms of adding some cattle on. And in
yeah,
terms of it would still be the same amount of
yeah.
grass
You
grown
could
on the
you could you
farm.
could just count them as dry as long as you had. I have no idea
Yeah.
what the intake of horses are, but I'm sure someone knows and we could put them on the system. Is grass clover measured differently? I don't really think it is, John. You can answer that one.
No, there is some small calibrations can be made on a plate meter. They're reasonably negligible. It depends again on the level of clover. It's probably highly unlikely it's a monoculture. It's just when we get into measuring things like multi-species, in terms of chicory, plantain, and other herbs and stuff, they're not that accurately measured by plate meters. Uh, the other thing is once we get into very high average farm covers that generally multi-species need, uh, then again it's not accurate. Similar to the idea to measuring silage with a plate meter, it's not accurate once it gets too tall. It's the exact
That's
same
right.
concept with
Yeah.
multi-species.
So no, I
So
think we
no, essentially grass clover is measured reasonably the same with a plate meter. there is
Yeah.
a formula you could put into your plate meter for different, but it would be very negligible the difference.
Oh, no, and just to be clear, we would welcome people with grass grower systems. How does the strip grazing affect measuring within the paddock? 3 days paddock graze, but 7 days strip graze. John, really, I think.
How do you do this within the 3 days paddock graze? So essentially, the only thing we're really missing in that, if it is 7 days, that you will be suppose getting a false figure of growth between that period. And similar with the 3 day paddock. So because I suppose the animals are grazing that paddock, you're getting suppressed growth on that paddock, so you're not really getting that reflection of the true potential of the growth on those paddocks. In terms of the 7 day strip grazing, uh, if they're doing that every time, it might be better to split that paddock up into further paddocks and measure it separately if it's a set thing done every time. Uh, and we can look at that on an individual case by case situation. Uh, if it's taken that amount of strips to get through a field, generally our farmers are maybe taking 2 or 3 strips, giving the cows maybe 12 hours grazing, 12 hour grazings a paddock is what we're currently working with maximum. So I haven't quite come across per paddock 7 days grazing. I think that's what the person means. They're strip grazing a paddock for 7 days. No, that would be challenging for AgriNet. But we can do things to get around that in terms of splitting the paddocks up further if that's what they're doing every time.
Yeah, I think that's something we can we could overcome with an individual farmer as we talk through the system and
Yeah.
give them the
And
support on
a
that.
lot of these things can be overcome by, breaking paddocks down further on AgriNet or different management procedures.
Yeah, that's grand. Another question here. After lambs are weaned, there tends to be a leader follower system. How does this fit within the recording? Obviously, with longer periods of grazing per paddock.
Yeah, no, that's another challenging one. It depends, like if it's uh for example, if the lambs went into the paddock for one day and then the ewes came in the following day to clean up, that's fine. It's no different to sheep going into a paddock for 2 days. And similar if it's 2, 3 days. But if it's lambs go into a paddock for 3 days and then the ewes are in it for 3 days, then you're getting to the stage there where it's too challenging to probably do. So that's probably not feasible. We do want farmers going into paddocks cleaning out within 3 days, preferably one day, to be honest. 1 to 3 day moves is where really we want to be, or even 12-hour moves. I understand with sheep, I'm a sheep farmer myself. We currently work on 2, 3 day moves, and in terms of measuring grass, it's very challenging to measure grass if it's any longer than that in a paddock because you're near enough becoming somewhere between set stocked and rotational grazing. So the more frequently we can move in there, and we can do that by subdividing the field and stuff. But yeah, we can chat about that on a case by case situation.
Okay. Next question from John Martin. Are you not better to measure silage fields during grazing and just before and after cutting to get grass production for best paddocks with an AgriNet? So you can identify what paddocks are performing, what paddocks should be reseeded.
Yeah, no, that would be great. But in terms of for grass check, so if a farmer wants to do that themselves, that's fine. But we would need to exclude that because then that would be therefore measuring silage growth rather than grazing growth. And what we're trying to create here in grass check is we're trying to measure grazing growth, not silage growth. They're two very different things. How grass grows in a silage situation and how grass grows in a grazing situation are two very different things, especially when it comes to modeling. So when we try to use this data to make predictions and also, I suppose, to tell other farmers the current growth rates of grazing grass, not silage, because silage will grow a lot faster once it gets into higher covers. Once you get between 3 to sort of 4.5, 5,000 ton, you're chatting about it maybe growing at a third quicker nearly as a lower average farm cover of that 2100. So it's giving the inflated average farm cover. So it's very much just trying to record grazing grass. If the farmer does want to record silage grass, we'd probably try to set that up separately, and we can do that really simply by just allocating those paddocks as a different mob on AgriNet, and then we would just take them out ourselves here at AgriSearch.
Okay. Just question here, will the meeting be available to watch again? Yes, we have it recorded and we will put the recording up in the next couple of days. We'll actually send everyone, what we'll do is we'll send you an email with the link, and we'll also put in that email the link to the information pack and application form, just so you have it. I know some of you already applied, but for anyone who hasn't, we'll put it in there. So that will be up on our YouTube in the next couple of days. Then the next question is, for pre-mowing paddocks, is there anything to be done differently recording that data?
No, so it's just again we want just no different to setting a putting cows into a field or putting a mower into a field. We just want you to measure it the day before it goes in and then measure the residue after. Now, measuring the residue after pre-mowing can be a little bit challenging in terms of, if there's grass left in terms of toppings, but that will be pretty negligible in most cases. The whole purpose of pre-mowing is to reduce the amount of waste. So I suppose no, it doesn't make any impact in terms of grass check or reckoning.
Okay. Well, listen, that's all the questions we've had. So thank you, John, for answering that for the presentation. And thanks to all of you for coming along tonight. As we said, we will put out the recording of this along with some links to the information pack and the application form. John and I are happy to take any queries individually on that too. And hope and look forward to looking through the have plenty of applications. Please do apply if you're interested. And we welcome all applications from all areas. So thanks to John, and thank you all very much for coming along tonight, and have a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.